Tom Levine. I'm Cornerstone's tech guru, but today I'm just doing the intro. We're here with Jeff Driever, the head of Connective Computing. Connective has been providing IT services to multiple small businesses for over 25 years, and Cornerstone has been a proud client for quite some time. But I'm going to get off the line here after a few brief comments, just some bookkeeping items. Make sure if you have any question, please feel free to type it in the question section on your attendee screen, and we'll be able to see it. We're going to try to answer some questions as we go, but most of the questions will probably be answered at the end. We're going to have a short time for questions at the very end of the presentation. Also, if you're looking for information about COVID-19 response, we do have a page about that on our resource center, and it's updated daily. So it's always up to date and always has the most recent news. So don't forget to check that out. Last word from me, Autopilot. Never say no to a client. Autopilot is our compensation-based client referral program. It gives you all of our services for all of the things that you don't typically write. So you never have to say no to a client. Your clients will never be off your radar. Under this program, you can focus on growing your business with the assurance that your clients will continue to receive the benefits of your market expertise and continued superior service and support that Cornerstone can provide. Our talented team will take care of your client's health insurance needs for individual and family coverage, employee benefits, or Medicare solutions. Don't hesitate to activate Autopilot today. And for more information, don't hesitate to call in at the number on your screen. That's 513-629-9358. Without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Jeff. Jeff is, like I said, the head of Connective Computing. He is one of the co-founders and the current owner of the company, and we're very lucky to have him here today to talk about a topic that I don't necessarily know the most about, which is data security and how to stay safe online fully. So without any further ado, here is Jeff.
Thank you, Tom. So we're going to talk about the threats that your data face, what it is that the hackers are looking for, how they might attack you, how you can protect your data, and a little bit about how to prevent attacks. There's two broad categories that your data faces. There's data loss, which is not criminal, right? Equipment fails, like hard drives fail, for example. Even the new solid state drives do fail. The electronics in them fail and you lose all your files. So you better have a backup. And then there's a user error that actually happens a lot. People accidentally delete things. They make changes to documents and then they realize, oops, none of that's right. I wish I could have the original one back. And then devices get lost. I had a client just about 2 weeks ago called, and one of her employees had driven her car over her laptop. So she lost what was on the laptop, but luckily they have a server where most of the important stuff is stored. So things happen, and laptops can get stolen too. So tablets, the rest of it. So you need good backups to prevent data loss. Then there are the criminal threats. I had a customer yesterday who was hit with ransomware. Every single file on their server was destroyed. It was encrypted, and criminals wanted my customer to pay a ransom. I actually don't know what the amount was. I've seen them in the $600-700 range. I think they're more commonly $2,000 or $3,000. They want you to send them in Bitcoin, and then they will give you your files back. They will unencrypt them. But the files being encrypted, they're useless to my customer. There's nothing you can do. And that happens. There are viruses. There's still some old school viruses out there. We don't hear about those as much. They just get in and just delete your files or really mess them up, and there's no way to get them back. The bigger threat really is that your files and sensitive data can be stolen and then used to attack your customers, or their personal data can be sold on the dark web, the black market of the internet, for other criminals to use and attack their accounts and their systems. So two really broad categories of threats against your data. We'll talk a little bit about both. There's an old rule of thumb, and I actually crunched some numbers on this a few years back, and it was very true at that time. I haven't done it recently, but the old rule is for every dollar that you spend on your hardware, your computer equipment, you'll spend $10 on the software for it, and $100 creating the data and maintaining the data for every dollar you spend on a computer. So, that can be employee payrolls, or it can just be your time. It could be buying lists and things. You may pay for certain data. But the data is really the expensive part, and I would encourage everyone to make sure you protect that data from loss. Make sure you have good backups, because there's a huge percentage, I don't remember the statistic, but small businesses who suffer major data loss or complete data loss, something like 90% of them just go out of business. It's just the end of it. I had a client many years ago, came in on Monday morning and all their computers were gone. Every single desktop and their server had been stolen. And a small business, probably 12 or 15 computers, something like that, and the server. And so the owner came into this utter disaster, and he walked over and opened the drawer under the server, and his backup tapes were still there. If they had stolen those backup tapes, he would have been out of business. It would have been the end of totally the end of the company, and I'm not exaggerating. But he had a backup. We overnighted a bunch of equipment. Took a day to get it. Took another day or two to put it back together. It was a pretty significant loss for him, but he was able to get back and pick up his business pretty much where he left off and continue. So the backup made all the difference in the world. The other side of that coin, kind of, if some criminal gets into your system and you have protected health information, for example, that's disclosed publicly, or it can be shown, can be traced back to an incident with your company. The government is levying some pretty hefty fines, anywhere from $57,000 to $1.7 million, depending on the amount of data loss and how culpable you are. If it's your data that got disclosed, had you taken steps to protect it, or had you been a little bit careless? And so the more you do to protect things, the less that fine might be. But that's not even the bigger problem. The bigger problem is the damage to your reputation and the trust of your clients. That is just irreparable in most cases. So, although somehow Anthem got away with it, but I had Anthem. So that's, to my knowledge, the only time my personal information has been hacked was when Anthem got hacked. But that's a topic for another day, I guess. So what are the hackers looking for? If they're trying to get into your system, if criminals are trying to steal your data, believe it or not, they would like to have your Facebook and Netflix usernames and passwords. They can sell those on the dark web. They sell for about $7, so they're not worth a whole lot. As you would guess, they want your credit card numbers. If they can find that and get that, or if you have your client's credit card number stored in your system, if they can get into your computer and cultivate a bunch of those, collect a bunch of those, they actually, credit card numbers for a United States credit card holder only sell for about $9. I would have thought they'd be worth a lot more than that, but they can get $9 a piece. So if they can come and get a couple hundred out of your system, that's a nice little payday for a day's work. Medical records sell for about $85 a piece, so literally 10 times what a credit card number is worth. People, there's a lot of stuff in technology. There's a lot of standards and audits and things to protect credit card data. People are uptight, a lot of procedures to protect credit card data. Medical records are far more valuable to the criminals, and they are actually sought after. So if you have people's health insurance information, their policy numbers, and then those are going to include things like their applications are going to include things like their date of birth and potentially their social security number, those kinds of things. That is extremely valuable, and hackers will seek that out. And I just read this, I was doing a little research for this presentation. There's a trend now, they're actually trying to steal doctors' identities. If you have a doctor's state medical license number, and there's certain licenses for prescriptions, and I think narcotics in particular, a copy of their diploma, um, that kind of information about a doctor. You can apparently can sell that on the dark web for about $500 each. So those are very valuable items right now. And then of course your premium accounts, your bank account, your PayPal account, and this surprised me a little bit. It's another thing I learned. If you have 800,000 Sky Miles, your Sky Miles account number, they can sell those for up to $1,400, depending on the balance. They gave the example of a PayPal account with the $6,000 in it. You can sell that PayPal account information for $1,400 on the dark web. So those are very, very valuable. So how do the criminals do it? Well, here's some common things that we see. The man in the middle attack, which is fairly complicated. I'm not much of a graphics guy, but I put a graphic together. I'll show you in just a second to kind of explain that more. Spyware and adware, I think we're all familiar with. That's been around for a long time. Where your computer, someone is able to watch what you're doing on your computer, spy on you, or your computer's popping up ads. Your browser will just suddenly open, and here's an advertisement, or you're surfing the web and another tab opens or a window opens. You get an advertisement. The criminal gets 5 cents or something for every one of those that's displayed. The advertiser will pay them. It's tracked back to them, and so that's why they do it. And they write those things to spread from computer to computer. Ransomware I mentioned earlier, they're just looking to charge you a fee to get your files back. They're going to disable them where you can't use them. And sad part is, it's something like if you pay the ransom 60 or 70% of the time, you will get a key to unlock your files so you can have your files back, which means 30 or 40% of the time you pay the money, you still don't have anything. I hope that never happens to anyone listening right now, but if it does, please don't pay them. This is the only way you can stop this activity, is if nobody pays them. They will have to go find some other criminal act to do. And there's a very significant chance that if you do pay it, you still won't get your files back. I understand. I've had clients who were in situations where, it was going to be the end of their business if they didn't pay. But I've had others who have lost maybe a couple weeks' work because that was the backup in the point in time, or the paper trail they had, that was as close to the current as they could get. And they went ahead and recreated their data, and they spent a lot of time and money to do that rather than pay the ransom. So if that's an option, I would recommend you take it. I had another client who got hit with ransomware, and she was very concerned that if she paid them, they would hit her again. They'd think she was a sucker, and they'd come back for a second round. And that thought hadn't occurred to me. She's probably right. So there's also something I want to mention called a backdoor Trojan, and these are kind of mean because they get in your computer and just sit there. And what it is it's a little piece of software that runs in the background. You don't even know it's there, and it gives a criminal, they could be anywhere in the world. Pick on Russia because everybody else does. They could be sitting in Russia just waiting, and they can take control of your computer at any time. And so you have one group of criminals who write these Trojans, and they deploy them, and they get 1,000 computers infected with them, and they're all just sitting there waiting for instructions. Then they can sell control of those computers to another criminal who can make those computers then send out spam all over the world, all 1,000 of them all at the same time. They can make those computers attack a website if they want to take somebody down and bombard their website to where it doesn't respond to legitimate requests anymore. It can't. It's overwhelmed. It's called a denial of service attack. The other thing those are used for, unfortunately, most often is ransomware. That's a pathway. Once those Trojans are out there, then someone can insert ransomware into your computer and start encrypting your files. Again, in the background, you don't even know it's happening. All of a sudden, a message pops up, or you reboot your computer and a message pops up and says, all of your files have been encrypted. You need to pay us a lot of money, or you can't use them. So the Trojans are nasty, and you wouldn't even know it's there typically. And then the phishing attacks is where a criminal is sending you an email, and they're trying to lure you into giving them information. Social engineering is part of that. Social engineering is when criminals use human behavior to get access to your stuff, to your files or your bank account or whatever. And that can be things like calling up on the phone, asking questions. Who's the CFO of your company? And then lo and behold, a week later, the CFO gets a falsified email, claims to be from the owner, says, hey, I need you to wire some money to this account. And it's all bogus. And maybe it was part of a social engineering effort where they contacted someone else in the company and collected a bunch of data. These criminals have been known to go through dumpsters and look at papers that have been discarded to find names of key employees and account numbers and those kinds of things. So, but we'll talk a little bit about social engineering as well. These are listed in the order least common to most common. So man-in-the-middle attack is pretty uncommon. Phishing's happening every day. Social engineering is happening every day, and there are lots of these backdoor Trojans out there. The rest of them kind of all tie together. With the man-in-the-middle attack, here you are sitting at your computer working hard. Your computer sends a request to a web server, for example. Could be an email server, could be any service online, and you get a response back. That's it. The top one. This is your normal internet connection. This is your normal connection to anything. Could be within your office even. Unlikely, but typically internet. You send a request to some service and you get a response back. The man-in-the-middle attack is the lower graphic, where you send a request and some criminal intercepts that request. Instead of it going to the server where it was intended, the criminal intercepts it, and they'll typically make a copy, record your request, and then send that same request on where it was supposed to go in the first place. Now the web server in this example sends a response back, but it doesn't come back to you. It comes back to the criminal, because the criminal is the one who sent the request to the web server. The web server knows no different. It answers back to the criminal. Here again, the criminal makes a copy of that response and sends it back to you. So what you see is you made a request and you got the response back that you expected. And you can sit there and work all day and not realize that everything's being intercepted in the middle of your conversation. And that's used to collect passwords and other data. It's not very common because, typically someone would have to hack into Spectrum's network or Cincinnati Bell's or whoever your internet provider is, AT&T, and be able to monitor those connections between you and some web server in California or wherever it is. That's very unlikely. It is possible for another device in your local network, in your home or in your office, to set up an attack like this. I have seen them on the internet as well, where let's say you Google a legitimate site and the result you get back when you click on it actually directs you to some criminal, and that criminal then performs this exact attack where they have hacked into a legitimate system and redirected the traffic that's normally destined for that system. They've redirected it to themselves, and then they're able to submit those to the real system and send the responses back, and they become in the middle and they can observe all that stuff. Again, complicated, not common, but it happens, can happen. Let's talk a little bit about protecting your data. Here again, there's two areas. You want to protect against data loss, and you want to protect against theft and other criminal acts. So remote storage is convenient, and we can talk a little bit about, I know a little more about Dropbox than I do some of the others, but Dropbox is nice. Your files are actually encrypted between your computer and the Dropbox servers, and they're encrypted when they're sitting on a hard drive in Dropbox data center. But they can be unencrypted by you, right? You can log into a website with your username and password and pull down one of those files. And they can also be unencrypted by the Dropbox employees. It's not all that secure. There are security concerns about stuff that's stored on Dropbox, okay? Probably not everyone who works for Dropbox is able to get into your files. I'm sure that's not the case. I'm sure they take steps to protect your files. But at the end of the day, there is that threat that these criminals have been known to go and apply for jobs at places like Dropbox, and they get hired, and now they have like a mole inside the company. So those kinds of things can happen. Steps are taken to prevent that, but you should know that that's a possibility. And so by default, anyone who had your password would be able to log into the Dropbox website and download your file. They do offer two-factor authentication, where to access your files through a web browser, you would have to log in with your username and password, and then you would also get a code texted to you, or something similar to that, where there would be another step to verify that it's really you that's logging in, what they call a second factor of authentication. So if you're using Dropbox or one of these services and they offer the two-factor authentication, I would highly recommend that. Google, all Google products, all of them, they scan any of your data for marketing purposes so they can market to you, and Google's building a profile of you. So if you're using Google Drive, anything that you store on Google Drive will be scanned with artificial intelligence, and they will collect information about you, and they will build a file with you. If you're using Gmail, they are reading every single email. They're scanning it with artificial intelligence and pulling data out of it. I have a relative who uses Gmail. He received an email from a business associate saying, hey, you should contact this lady for a business need. I forget what her service was. Went home that night and opened up his Facebook account. Here's a friend suggestion for this lady. They have no friends in common, no other commonality, but Facebook is suggesting her as a possible friend. And it's because Google read his Gmail that he received that day and sold that information to Facebook, and now Facebook is presenting that as a friend suggestion. So whenever you sign up for Google Drive, Google Docs, Gmail, you agree to their terms of service, and I bet there's not a single person listening who has read them. And it's even worse than that. When you sign up for Google Drive, they describe Google Drive, and it says, one of the first things it says is, you also agree to our terms of service, which are incorporated by reference. There's a link you have to click to go read their terms of service. And I imagine that's true of all their products. They reference these other terms, and it says right in there, you give them permission to examine all your data and build this file on you. So my advice is, don't use Google Drive, don't use Gmail, don't use Chrome browser. None of it. They're tracking everything you do. These services, though, do protect you against a catastrophic loss. So if your hard drive fails and you've got stuff stored on Dropbox or Google Drive or whatever, you have a copy that you can bring back. So they are good in that respect. The security is not like an online backup. So if you're using a service like Carbonite or iDrive, Acronis is a great business product. There are dozens, hundreds maybe, of online backup solutions. And these all follow the same, typically they all follow the same model. Your files are encrypted, they're secured on your device before they're ever sent over the internet. So what Carbonite, for example, what they're receiving is an encrypted version of your file, and what's stored on their server is encrypted. If you want good security, you can configure their products so that they cannot open your files. By default, I believe when you sign up, there is a method for their techs, if need be, to get in to be able to unencrypt your files. And that's to help you out if you lose your password or whatever. It's a method for you to get your files back. iDrive and Acronis, the others work the same way. Your files are encrypted before they ever leave the building, before they ever leave your device. No one can pick it up off scanning the Wi-Fi, or your internet provider can't make any sense out of it. It's all encrypted when it's traveling. It's encrypted when it's stored. Those are great services. They're not free, but I would recommend signing up for one of those to protect your most valuable data. You can back it up to an external hard drive yourself. If you're taking those off-site, that is not a bad solution. The drives should be encrypted if you're going to take them off-site. Heaven forbid you're driving home from your office and you stop to pick up some groceries and somebody smashes the window and grabs it out of your car, and now that personal health information or whatever it is you have backed up is now out there in the world somewhere. So the device should be encrypted, and I forgot what else I was going to say about that. Sorry. I'm the absent-minded technician. But online backup is a little, I know what I was going to say. The online backup is a little simpler in that regard. It just goes up to a cloud somewhere and it's secure, and you don't have to really think about it. You don't have to swap devices around. You don't have to drive them back and forth. One more thought I'll mention on that. If you're doing backup to a local device, to a USB stick or an external USB drive, I had a client that thought this was very clever. I had a client who happened to be across the street from a bank. And so they walked across the street to the bank and rented a safe deposit box. And they would take a couple drives across the street, put them in the safe deposit box, and bring a couple back. So they always had a couple that were off-site, very secure. I mean, tornadoes don't take out bank vaults, right? The whole building's gone. The bank vault is still standing there. So I thought it was a great solution. It was reasonably convenient, as they happen to be right across the street, but everybody does some banking. So, if you want to do that, you can avoid the monthly fees of an online backup service. If you already have a safe deposit box, it might be a really great solution. Then, as far as protecting more against criminals, you can encrypt your entire hard drive on your device, even if it's like a tablet. The iPads are encrypted by default. There's a big news story now. It's been a few years ago about a device that was encrypted, and the FBI wanted it. Apple refused to decrypt it, and there was a lawsuit, I think. And it's been a while, and I've forgotten the details. Although I know they did. It was a big deal, and the FBI did get into it, and I actually know how they did it, and it was pretty clever. So if you have a laptop or typical Windows device or Mac, you can encrypt the whole drive. What that protects you from is someone can't, well, maybe it's easier to explain it the other way. If your drive is not encrypted and your laptop is lost or stolen, someone can open the laptop, pull the hard drive out, stick it in another computer, and read your files off of it. They don't have to know your password. They don't have to get into that device. They can connect that drive to another device. There may be a way to boot it up on some kind of a CD or a USB stick and avoid Windows or the Mac operating system and get into it that way. But if the drive is encrypted, then the only way to access the files on it are to use it in that computer with that operating system. And when you start it up, you'll have access to those files. It's pretty clean these days. There's a slight risk that if you do that, the encryption can go sideways and you can't access your files. So I would highly recommend a backup of some sort in addition to that encryption. But if you've got a device that's leaving the building, a laptop, tablet, whatever it is, especially if you travel a lot, you run the risk of it being lost. You could leave it in an airport or a restaurant, or stolen. Somebody can grab it and can snatch it right out of your hands in the airport and take off with it, and you never see it again. Those drives really need to be encrypted. It's very important, actually.
So just as a personal story, I've had friends who haven't had drive level encryption, and they've been, their house has been broken into.
Yes.
All of their computers stolen, and a little while later, all of their online accounts got locked out. So someone had accessed their drives, gotten into all their personal settings, and retrieved a lot of their passwords. So it's.
And I'll be honest, I don't worry much about desktop computers. There's some people who kind of jump up and down. Those need to be encrypted. Well, these days, a criminal is not likely to take a desktop computer. There's not a lot of market for that to sell it to somebody. But even if you have a laptop in your home, yeah, someone could break in. And if someone broke into your house, that is one of the things they would grab: your jewelry, your cash, a laptop or a tablet. They're going to grab those and take them. So whole drive encryption is something to consider for any mobile device. It probably should be enabled on any mobile device. Okay, should I finish this slide?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, the last thing I was going to talk about is file level encryption. If your software offers password protection like Excel does, you can password protect an Excel spreadsheet. That's a very nice basic protection for those individual files. I know if you password protect an Excel spreadsheet and you forget the password, there are services where you can send it out and get your file back. So there are ways to break that. but it is going to keep the casual person, definitely keep honest people out of it, right? And the casual criminal from getting into it. If you use Windows, Mac doesn't offer file level encryption, but Windows does. But it basically only prevents other legitimate users from accessing those files. So if you have a computer you're sharing with someone else, or you have a server where multiple people share it, you can encrypt those using the Windows encryption. I don't recommend it. It really will only keep someone else from accessing it, because if you get some kind of malware virus on your computer and it's running in the background, it has all the rights you do. If you can open those files and you don't have to put in a password, so can the criminals. They can get right to them, and then they can transfer them over the internet to their home base and do what they will with them. So, and the same is true of whole drive encryption. If your whole hard drive is encrypted and you boot up Windows and now you can use it, so can the spyware and the threats that are on your computer. They'll have access to those files as well. All right, Tom. We'll answer some questions. We'll try to answer some questions.
We have a few here so far, so I figured it might be a good time.
Oh.
But this one comes from.
What is a good alternative to Gmail? Well, there are still some paid services out there. Those are going to give you the best security, right? They're not making money by selling your data to somewhere. Google's one of the most valuable companies, I think, on the stock market now, and they're giving all this stuff away. Gmail's free, Google Docs is free. How? Why? How does that work? Think about it. So if you're paying for an account, you're probably getting a more secure, more, in my mind, more moral, what's the right word? Honest service. Honest is the word I was looking for. Yeah. So what is a good alternative? Typically, your internet provider will offer you an email account. So if you have in Cincinnati, if you have Cincinnati Bell and you have a Fuse.net account, that's probably not bad, or Spectrum. Jennifer, I don't know the answer, really. I don't know what's a really good alternative. Maybe I could do some research and Tom could let everybody know.
I'll send it out in my email at the end of the presentation.
Does iCloud fall into these categories? I think Apple is a lot more honest, a lot more serious about security than any of these other folks. To me, I look at Apple and Google as kind of being on opposite ends of the spectrum. I see Google as very nefarious, doing a lot of stuff in the background. They're not really owning it. Apple, on the other hand, is telling the FBI, no, we're not going to encrypt that criminal's device, which I think they went a little too far the other way. When it's a criminal, I think you should decrypt it for the FBI. But iCloud's probably pretty. I'm not an expert on iCloud. I don't work a lot with Apple products. I own an iPad, but iCloud's probably a pretty good, safe alternative. What would you recommend? Yeah, this is kind of the same question. Can we give a list? Could you afterwards give a list of email and storage providers such as Dropbox that you would recommend? Do you view Outlook as a much better email system than Gmail? Well, the problem, Ann, is Microsoft is moving to the same model, right? So Google, I believe, and I could be wrong, I think Google has a higher market valuation in the stock market than Microsoft. Again, they're giving all this stuff away. So if you're Microsoft, you go, hey, how's that working? How do we cash in on that? So Windows 10, right? Everybody's moving from Windows 7 or Windows 8 to Windows 10. How much did it cost? Nothing. How much did it cost Microsoft to write Windows 10? A fortune. They paid huge teams of programmers to write millions, literally millions of lines of computer code to create Windows 10, and they're giving it away. Why? How is that profitable for them? I'll tell you the answer. With Windows 10, Microsoft is spying on you. They're recording every keystroke you type into the computer. They're collecting all kinds of data on you, and they're cultivating it, and they're categorizing it and compiling it and selling it to advertisers. So do I view Outlook? You're asking about Outlook.com, which I think is a free email service from Microsoft. No, I imagine they're doing the same thing. Anything you're getting for free, somebody's paying for it. If you every single email you open, there's an ad that pops up. That's what you probably see on Fuse.net when I sign on to their webmail. helping my mom with her email. It's just a sea of advertisements. And okay, so that's how they're making their money. If you can ignore the annoying ads, then that's probably a good free option. But there are still services out there you can pay for that you don't have to deal with either one of those. You get your security in, and you don't have to deal with all the ads. I'm using DuckDuckGo on Chrome. Tom, talk louder.
Oh, yeah. Sorry about that. We're kind of sharing a mic.
Using DuckDuckGo on Chrome, is Google still following? Yes, if you're using Chrome, they can track everything. In fact, there was a guy who determined that Chrome has something called incognito mode, where it's not sites aren't able to track you. Google can still track you. And there was a guy who determined that Google had stuff in his file that he had done in incognito mode. So yes, DuckDuckGo is a good alternative to Google search, I think. I'll be honest, I use Google search engine because it's a really good search engine. I get really good results. But look at alternatives and don't use Google Chrome.
And just as a follow-up, our last presentation, I believe it was the last one, the one before, was on search engines. So if you have any other questions, I would definitely recommend checking that out. We have a bunch of different options there.
Opera VPN, does it actually work? I'm not familiar with that in particular. I know there are a number of VPN products out there, and what they're doing is they're putting a piece of software on your device, and then everything you send to the internet is encrypted, and it's sent to some device somewhere out there, which decrypts it and forwards it on. So it is hiding what you're doing from your internet provider, let's say, your coworkers, maybe other folks sitting in Starbucks, right? If you're sitting in Starbucks with your wireless device. The thing about that is, and I hear these ads on the radio and they talk about your banking site. You log onto your banking site, everybody in Starbucks can get your password. No, they can't. When you see HTTPS in your browser, those requests are being encrypted before they ever leave your device. What's going through the air at Starbucks has already been encrypted. You don't need a VPN to protect your bank account or other secure websites. You can use those, of course, and there is, but you have to trust who's on the other end of that connection. Your VPN is going to somewhere, and if the people on the other end aren't doing a good job, then
if you want, we can do some other questions later. We do have more of the presentation.
Okay. Yeah, I have a few more slides. It won't take too much longer, and we'll circle back and answer some more questions. I think that's a good idea. So one of the things Tom asked me to talk a little bit about is firewall versus antivirus, and we won't dig too deep into this, but a firewall is a good firewall is a hardware device that sits in the back room. It could be software, though, that runs on your computer. And in either case, it's protecting your system from external connections, from someone else connecting to your device over the internet. My notes are all wrong. Sorry, I'm laughing at myself. Firewalls will typically allow anything you want to do can go out, but nothing can come back in unless it's a response to something you requested. So if you say, I want to see ESPN.com, the firewall is not going to let any traffic come in unless it's coming from ESPN.com. It knows you just sent out a request. Then there's a tracking thing. It's all, I don't know, tracking might not be the right word. The firewall has a way to keep all this stuff organized, and it knows when you send a request, it knows there's a response coming back to that particular request. And if no response comes back after a certain period of time, that pathway, if you will be closed. So some attacker can't come in on that same, it's called a port. So they prevent criminals and malware from connecting to your computer from the internet or from a computer to the next cubicle or the next table at Starbucks, right? They're protecting you against that. That's what firewalls do. There are more complex firewall devices like the one Cornerstone has is state of the art. And it checks everything that goes in or out of the building. It looks for virus stuff. It looks for malware stuff. It looks for ransomware. It can stop that. Even So it is actually scanning stuff that's going out as well as stuff that's coming in. It's very cool. It's very expensive. So if you're a small business, sometimes it can be tough. It may be more than you want to spend, but I would certainly recommend it. If you have an office, that I would recommend that you have some sort of firewall device protecting your network as a whole. And if you spend a lot of time in Starbucks, then maybe a software firewall is a good idea as well. Again, though, that stuff is your bank account, your communication over the web with your bank to check your balance is all encrypted anyway. Antivirus is software that sits on your computer and in the background and monitors everything that's happening in real time. And what's looking for patterns? It's looking for activities, or they call them file signatures, patterns in the data that are known threats. That list has to be updated all the time because there are new threats coming out literally every minute. I mean, every hour of every day there are these criminals are creating new threats. Sometimes they're just minor variations to existing threats. That's very common. And your software, your antivirus software, has to be updated to find those threats. And some of the antivirus programs actually use artificial intelligence to look for things that just look suspicious, and they'll stop that activity. And that is, in a broad sense, the how the antivirus companies are addressing the ransomware issue. When it sees something that looks like it's encrypting your files, it'll put a stop to it. And if that's you and you're trying to encrypt some files or whatever, generally it'll have a pop-up and say, this looks fishy to me, do you want to continue? In lab tests, these competitions that they have, nearly all of the antivirus programs blocked at least 90% of viruses and malware, and none of them stopped 100% of it. So the difference between products in terms of their effectiveness, normally there's not a lot of difference, okay? Some are better than others, but it's incrementally better. It's not a world better, okay? The biggest difference between the products that work well is how large the antivirus product is and how efficient it is. There are a lot of antivirus products out there that will really slow down your computer. I'm just going to pick on Symantec and Norton because we used their product for years for our business customers, and it kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And I have seen now many times someone has a single computer, brand new computer, you take it out of the box, it's clipping right along, we're installing software and things, and then we put Norton or Symantec antivirus on it, and the thing just slows way down. You just see a big slowdown. So that's one of the bigger differences. And I want to point something out. Never, ever have more than one antivirus program on your computer because they butt heads. They're both trying to scan the same file at the same time, and it will grind your computer to a halt. So if you ever, that's one of the things we actually look for. And someone says, man, my computer's so slow, I can't use it. A lot of times we find there's two different antivirus products installed. So if you're going to make a change, make sure you uninstall the old one before you install the new one. Now Microsoft with Windows 10 is offering Windows Defender with Windows 10 at no cost. So first of all, in this world you get what you pay for. It is better than nothing. It does stop some viruses and things, but there are free versions of antivirus from Kaspersky, Avira, and Bitdefender, and they're all better than Windows Defender. So if you don't want to pay for it, take some time, go find one of those three, or those three are probably the top three, probably any one of those. Download it, run it on your computer. We like Trend Micro. Their product is very efficient. You don't notice much of a slowdown when you install it, and it's very effective. It stops a lot of stuff, and they've got some really nice ransomware protection built into their product now. That's new in the past year or two, and it helps. I mean, you can still get ransomware even with really good antivirus and a firewall and all the rest. It still happens, but Trend is really working hard to block that, and they're doing a good job. Don't use Avast. Avast bought a company called AVG. They've both been around a long, long time. I just read again in researching for this presentation, Avast was collecting data and selling it to advertisers. Your antivirus should not be doing that. Your antivirus should not be monitoring what you're doing and selling that information to advertisers. They have free versions. Don't use them. There are other free versions out there. There are plenty of others you can buy. Typically $30 a year for one computer, 35. A lot of them have, you can protect 3 or 5 computers for 50 or 60 bucks. It's not a lot of money. Well worth the investment. I would highly recommend it. Let's talk a little bit about phishing, fishy or phishing emails. So one of the biggest threats to your computer is email. That's how most of the viruses are transmitted these days. And these phishing scams where people will send an email and there's no virus in the email. They're just asking you to click on a link to go to a website and put in your password so that they can steal it from you. Or they're trying to collect information through social engineering. They send out 1,000 of these and see who will respond. There may be absolutely nothing dangerous in the email. They're just looking to see who will respond so they can dig deeper there. So this is an actual email what was received at Cornerstone. This is probably a virus, but the names have been changed to protect the innocent. So I just want to point out a few things that you can look for. Here's the email. And I apologize, the highlighting looked nicer on my little laptop, but hopefully it looks okay to you. It says it's from account payable. Shouldn't that say accounts payable? Isn't that what we normally would write? And then the email address is postmaster. Now, if you're not a tech guy like me, you probably might not know that postmaster is a system account. It's not a human. That's a system account on a mail server. If you send an email to a company and it can't be delivered, it's typically the postmaster account that sends you back a failure notice to say, I can't deliver this. Email happens to be something I know a whole lot about, and I cannot imagine a scenario where a legitimate email would come to you and say it was from postmaster. These are minor things, right? Anyone could mistype accounts payable and just type account payable, and postmaster, that's, I guess, a little more. But look at the domain, secured convo servatian. What the heck is that? It's not even a real word, right? If it looks like nonsense, it probably is. Okay, but this, if you notice down in the signature, it says it's from Jonathan at Schaefer, we're going to call it Schaefer Construction, okay? That's not, maybe Schaefer Construction is a division of Secure, whatever it is, but I don't think so. They don't match up. Here's the date, 13 May. In foreign countries, that's very common. That's how they typically write the date, but that's not how we normally write it in the U.S. So that kind of makes you go, right? If you're a Caddyshack fan, this isn't Russia. Is this Russia? This isn't Russia. I didn't think so. And then the attachment has 2 extensions. Is it a PDF or is it an HTML? Right? It could be an Adobe Acrobat document. They're all .pdf, or it could be a web file, a web page, HTML page. That's not right. There's a couple things here. Normally we would capitalize the word hello, right? And we don't normally call Tom T. Levine. You might, but typically you'd write hello Tom, right? And there ought to be some punctuation, a comma or a colon or something. And this is wrong. It's not attachment you will find. It should say attached you will find. So here's these little minor things. I might have 1 or 2 more. Cornerstone is in Cincinnati. This is from a construction company in Texas. I don't think we would hire a construction company in Texas to do work in Cincinnati. You might, but that's one of those things. It doesn't make sense. If you saw any one of these, maybe it wouldn't be any big deal. But when you start seeing multiples of these in email, you should get very suspicious. If there are lots of little things, multiple little things that don't seem quite right, they probably aren't. So I actually opened the attached file. It was an HTML file web page in Notepad. And most of you are probably not programmers. None of this probably makes any sense to you. But there's a line there that says URL equals. And what that is it's code. Those are the codes for the characters HTTPS. I decoded them there on the bottom line. And it was as long as your arm. I didn't put the whole thing on the slide. It wouldn't fit. I mean, it was way long. Now, who would send you a web address in a form like that? That's not right. So this alone, just looking at that would tell me this is not a legitimate email. Here's another one. This is an email that probably really did come from a broker that Cornerstone deals with. Again, the names have been blacked out to protect the innocent. And what I did here was I just, as you can see, step one, I put the mouse over the link. There's a big red unlock secure email link in the middle of this message. So you open it up, and what they're trying to get you to do is to click on that link to see your secured email. So you put the mouse over, don't click on it, just let the mouse rest there. The cursor turns into a little hand that you see on the screen there. And then the box pops up above it to the right that shows the website address that the link would take you to if it were clicked. That does not look like a regular link to me. That is a nonsense domain again. Those are not words that make sense. It's not look like any kind of secure email service. I wanted to mention too, at the bottom it says if you're having issues, you can open a trouble ticket on our website, and there's a link there for support. In this particular email, when I moused over that, I got the same nonsense domain. If I'd have clicked that, it would have taken me to an infected website. In a lot of emails, those are legitimate links. What they're trying to do is make the email look legitimate. So they'll put a link at the bottom to Google Tech Support or whoever, whatever it is. And when you click on it, it really does take you there. But they're trying to get you to click that big link in the middle. So don't, just because you find some valid stuff in it, don't think that it's that the whole email is legit. This is probably what happened was this broker probably got a virus on their computer, and the virus went through their Outlook contacts and emailed itself out, emailed this little email to every single person in their contact book. And some percentage of those folks will click it thinking it really did come from them and they really did send them a secure email, and it's going to take them to a website that will do who knows what. Another big trend we're seeing a lot is they will send, you get an email that has a PDF attached to it. And when you open the PDF contains a link to an infected website. So the threat is once removed, and it helps them get past the antivirus and anti-spam filters that are out there in the world, because now it's a legitimate email with a legitimate PDF attached to it. What the systems don't detect is that the PDF contains a link to something that's evil. Not too surprisingly, the biggest threats right now are criminals using the coronavirus, trying to profit from it. This is all data from the U.S. CERT, I forget what it stands for. It's a government agency. It's Computer Emergency Response. Look at that. I pulled it out of my thin air. Computer Emergency Response Team. It's a government agency in a partnership with a university that tracks online threats and alerts people to it, banks and others, me. They're seeing a lot of phishing and malware emails using coronavirus in the subject because people are concerned, interested. They're seeing emails with an Excel attachment. So there's nothing bad about the email, but if you open the Excel attachment, there's macros in there which will install malware on your computer, if depending on your Excel settings, of course. They're actually out there registering domain names, coronavirus.com, that kind of thing, where they'll send you an email with a link to a website that looks like it's really about coronavirus. It's really about stealing your information or infecting your computer. Lots of folks are working remotely. Lots of them were not working remotely a few months ago. A lot of companies have put in remote access systems, and now these guys are trying to hack into those, trying to attack those. And then there's also a lot of phishing going on using text messages. I've seen a lot of notices about that. I haven't received one personally, thank goodness, but be suspicious if you get a text from someone you don't recognize and it's trying to take you to a website. That's going on right now. They will use social engineering, and they are using social engineering because people are concerned, people are interested. There was an app for your Android phone that claimed to be a real-time tracker, but actually it was just trying to install some ransomware on your device. And it's since been taken down, but that's the kind of thing they're doing. there are still emails going out with subjects about coronavirus or outbreak in your city, right? And the links inside them are taking you to an infected website, or there's an attachment that's infected. They will spoof sender information. One thing about email is it's not really very secure. The standard was set up 20 something years ago, and at that time the guy who dreamed up email never dreamed we'd have all this criminal type stuff going on today. So I can send an email out very easily that says it's from you, and if the recipient hits reply, the reply will go to you. There's all kinds of variations on that. There's no good way to stop it. There are some somewhat effective devices out there to slow that stuff down. But so we're seeing emails that claim to be from the World Health Organization and they're not, or they claim to be from a doctor and they're not. And there are criminals sending out stuff that claims to be from a company's human resources department. Got to open this attachment, right? It's from HR. So right now, be especially cautious about anything having to do with coronavirus, unfortunately. This is not exactly about data security, but I wanted to mention, because everyone's using Zoom and GoToMeeting and other web-based meetings, the criminals are trying to attack through that method as well. If you're having a meeting, don't make it public. They will join in on your meeting. Make sure you have a password, or some of the services have a waiting room where you go and decide who gets to join the meeting. You get a list of who's waiting. Don't post your links on Facebook or whatever where anybody can see it. I actually see that a lot. We were posting meetings. Here's the meeting number. Here's the password. Well, you just defeated the purpose of having a password because you just gave it to everybody. Don't do that. Make the screen sharing for the host only if you can, if your software allows that, so that someone else doesn't take over the meeting, and make sure whoever's hosting it has a current version of the software. Questions? We have questions.
Yeah, we have quite a few actually here. So if we don't end up getting to it, I promise we will respond by email, or I'll take a look at it after the presentation. But this top one's actually a great one. But this actually gets more into the specifics.
Yeah, is POP more secure than IMAP? It doesn't make any difference. Either one can be secure or not. It's a setting in there whether to use a secure connection or not. What are your thoughts on Microsoft OneDrive? My thought is they're trying to be Google. I imagine they're scanning everything you're storing on OneDrive. That's my guess. I don't know that for sure. If it's free, you got to figure out how they're getting paid. If it's free and you're not seeing a bunch of ads, they are probably cultivating your data and selling it. If we don't have a server any longer, do we still need a firewall? I would highly recommend one. If you still have computers or tablets or phones that are connected to the internet, I would highly recommend a firewall. The really good ones will protect you from ransomware and a lot of other things, in addition to protecting the hackers coming in from the outside. What's your opinion on managed Office 365? Again, I see Microsoft is moving to that thing, but they are charging for Office 365. So, the main complaint I hear about Office 365 is the software changes so much. It's constantly being updated. So you're using this version of Word, and you come in tomorrow, and now you have a newer version of Word, and stuff isn't where it used to be. So you got to kind of relearn it. And I think generally those updates are like a minor learning curve. It's a little thing to learn, but it happens a lot, and people get really annoyed by it. So it's also way more expensive. Don't believe the propaganda Microsoft puts out about how much it'll save you to go to Office 365. If you're paying for something every month, or you're paying by the year, it doesn't matter. You're paying for it forever. Go buy a copy for a couple $100. You own it, you're done. The advantage to the Office 365 is being able to store stuff in their cloud, and you can access it from anywhere. But and for some people, that may be a good model. It may be worth that additional investment. But in a traditional desktop, if you have an office environment with some kind of server or central storage device, it's way cheaper to just buy the copy and not pay for it every month. How is Yahoo Mail? I think they're okay. They're old school, and I think they're ones that still have a lot of advertisements when you go to their website. And I don't know that they're actually reading your content. It's I can't say with certainty, but I think Yahoo's probably okay. Leslie mentions there's a company called isoc.net. They offer email for about $50 a year. isoc.net has been around forever, so they must be doing something right. I mean, they've been around longer than I have, and I've been around forever. Opera browser has a built-in VPN for free. Certainly not an expert with Opera. I don't think I've ever used it. I've heard of it. With any VPN solution, you want to know where the other end is going, right? Because a VPN is a secure connection from your device to a static point somewhere on the internet. You're always going somewhere, some spot, some company, and then you proceed from there. So if you trust the other end, then yeah, that should be fine. Would you say Trend Micro is better than Bitdefender? Now we're probably splitting hairs. Again, what my company uses and recommends is Trend Micro. I think Bitdefender is a very good product. It might be just as good. I'm not certain. I wouldn't try to persuade you not to buy Bitdefender. There are others that I would try to persuade you to look for something else. Bitdefender's not one of them. I've always used Norton 360. What would be a good alternative? Again, Norton, we have found, tends to really slow your computer down. If you're not experiencing that, Norton has always done a really good job of protecting against viruses, detecting threats and stopping them. Personally, I've had a lot of experience with it. I hold their product in high regard as far as its effectiveness. My complaint with it is it seems very large and it seems to slow down your computer. Teresa asked, does Trend Micro have protection for mobile phones? Yes, they do. For Android. Apple, I forgot to talk about Apple. I was supposed to talk about Apple. There's a belief out there that Apple products can't get viruses or don't get viruses or very rarely get viruses. If you have a Mac, you need antivirus software. The incidence is lower. There are fewer Apple devices in this world. So if I'm a criminal sitting in Russia, we'll pick on Russia, who am I going to target, Windows or Apple? Well, there's hundreds of millions of billions of Windows devices in the world, and not nearly as many, about 1/10 as many, 1/20 as many, or 1/5, Apple devices. So yeah, I'm going to go after the bigger target. But there are still, it does happen. Viruses attack Apple products. Criminals attack Apple products. You should have it on Mac. You cannot, at least last time I looked, you could not buy antivirus for an iPhone or iPad because Apple, I guess, is believing their own propaganda. Apple's claim is you can't get a virus on an iPhone. However, I have a very good client who put an app on his iPhone and it proceeded to email everyone in his contact list about itself, how great it was, and that they should install it too. To me, that's viral activity. If I had an iPhone, I would like to have something that would stop that sort of nonsense. But the Apple model, the iPhone model is everything goes through the Apple store, whatever they're calling it this week. You can't download software to your iPhone from anywhere else. You can only get it through Apple. And so Apple does do rigorous checking on all the apps that are out there available for you. And they do a good job of stopping viruses from getting through. The virus threat on an iPhone or an iPad is probably the lowest of any internet connected device out there. I contend it's still possible and that there ought to be antivirus for it, but I don't think you can buy antivirus for Apple devices. You can for the Mac and you should for the Mac. You touch on securing Thunderbird email. Thunderbird's a very nice product. I happen to use that. It's free. It's an email client. You can set it up with if you have a POP or an IMAP mailbox. I'm probably being a little too nerdy here, but yeah, I would recommend Thunderbird. That is an open source product. So a group of programmers get together. This is what they do for fun on the weekends. They write an email program and give it away to people. So can't beat the price. Is there a template or system best designed for setup of a small office of 2 to 10 people? Really, Jim asks if there's a good solution for an office of 2 to 10 people. Really depends on the office, really depends on what you're doing, what your needs are, business model. You're welcome to contact us. We'd be happy to sit down with you, no charge, and talk about your options. But no, the short answer is no. There's not a one-size template for an office of a certain size. How concerned should I be regarding clients that send me employee enrollment forms and other information by unsecure email? What should I tell them? Well, I would tell them don't do that. Yeah, the issue becomes how do they get it to you securely, right? So for years and years we used fax because it was actually more secure than email, but now nobody uses fax anymore, so that's kind of out the window. You know, you can use a service like Dropbox. What I would suggest is don't leave them up there. You know, let them post them, you pull them down, and then delete them off the cloud. I wouldn't use Google Drive. I wouldn't use OneDrive personally. There are others out there as well. If you do a little searching, you can find something. I guess that's probably, they're going to be awfully large to email. You know, Cornerstone has a security email service anyone can use to send documents securely to Cornerstone. I think of just about any size, actually. So contact your Cornerstone rep if you want to send something securely to Cornerstone. We can do that by email. I worry about saving to the cloud. What is your opinion? Elizabeth, I worry about it too. You know, the cloud is a server in someone else's building. That's what the cloud is. I like to have a server in my building. I know who can get into it, who can't. If it's in someone else's building, I don't know who has physical access to it, who has electronic access to it. Typically, anything on the cloud is set up so it can be accessed from all over the world, right, for your convenience. I'm going to sell you some storage on Dropbox or whatever cloud service, and you're going to be able to access it from anywhere, which means everyone can access it from anywhere, right? It's not as safe as having it in your back room where it's locked up. How safe is it to use Geek Squad? That's a good question. I don't know. I know who they are. I don't know a whole lot about them. They're probably fine. So are you saying Apple or Mac is much better than other laptops? What about Lenovo computers? Well, honestly, a Mac laptop is probably a little more secure. The Windows operating system is flawed by default. When you install software, it can actually modify your operating system. So now if I'm a criminal, I can take advantage of that feature. I can create some software that modifies your operating system. Apple doesn't allow that. So their whole system from the very base of the operating system, from the ground up, it is built in a more secure manner. So they are inherently more secure. They can still get viruses and spyware, and probably can still get ransomware. I'm sure they can. So you still need antivirus. Generally speaking, yes, they're a little more secure. Probably okay with either one if you have a firewall and antivirus, and you know, take the right precautions. Don't click on links in random emails that show up. You said don't use Google Drive. Is that different than enterprise level of Google Drive? We pay for it. Maybe. I doubt it. I imagine Google is still scanning all your content. You'd have to go back and look at the agreement when you signed up and sent them a check. What did you agree to? Probably you agreed to allow them to use artificial intelligence to cull through everything you store on Google Drive and compile it and build a file on you that they can sell to advertisers. Maybe not. Maybe if you're paying for it, maybe they don't do that. I just going to be completely honest. I just don't trust Google as a company. They bought YouTube and they're doing a whole lot of censorship there. And I know there's a lot of crackpots posting videos right now, but there are a lot of people who sound very sane who have different opinions, and Google takes them down. And I say, don't give Google your money. What about a Surface computer? The Surface, it runs Windows, so it is just a very convenient laptop. It is has exactly the same threat. What do you call it? Base it's called threat surface. Ironically, yeah. So a Surface has the same threat surface as a laptop would. There's no difference. They're cool devices. They're overpriced, I think, but they're neat.
especially if you're doing something that's more hardcore, you're going to want a laptop anyway.
Yeah, the full size or fuller, at least size keyboard on a laptop and some sort of mouse. I guess with a Surface, you can carry a mouse around with you too. You can be a lot more productive entering data on a laptop than you can on an iPad or a Surface. If you're just going to view data, you want to take something device out to show your customers, hey, look at this, and you can swipe through them. iPad or Surface is great for that. They're small and light and they're cool looking. But if you're going to actually answer emails and enter information, you're probably going to want a laptop.
So I think that actually answers most of the questions people. Sorry, hopefully you can hear me a little bit better now. But big thank you to Jeff. Jeff is wonderful, and he's got a lot more expertise in the area of security, and he's been in this a lot longer than I have. So Jeff is a wonderful resource for us here at Cornerstone. Does Google have access to everything on your computer or just your email? Yeah, it's really just the Gmail service if you use it. If you use Chrome, they have access to anything that you enter on Chrome. So it's the level of investment that you have with Google. That's pretty much the level of access they have on you. I know Jeff uses Google for his web searches. Not recently, but I switched to Bing just to get away from Google entirely. Although that's still Microsoft, so it's, they're following a similar model. You're kind of you're not in good luck either way. But yeah, it really just depends on your level of investment at that point. We are getting a bunch of thank yous for Jeff here, and thank you very much. So yeah, if you have any other questions that you weren't comfortable putting up in the chat for Jeff, or if you posted a question and then left, we will answer that via email. I should be able to get a link out there by Friday, and this will be recorded and uploaded to our Cornerstone website. So feel free to check it out there. And I believe we do have a few other things to mention. Next week, we will be doing the Build Your Brand. Jess Larkin will be focusing on Facebook for Business and making the most of your Facebook accounts. Also tomorrow, we are going to be doing Marketing to Millennials on the individual corner with Jeff Bagelin. As a millennial myself, I'm interested in that. So we'll see what everyone has to say. Also, next Tech Tuesday, we're going to get a little bit more deeper into encryption, what that is, how it operates, and VPNs, what you can actually use them for, and what they're even, doing when you're accessing them. So that'll be pretty informative as well. Big thank you again to Jeff, and have a wonderful rest of your week, and hopefully we'll see you the next time we do a Tech Tuesday. Thanks, and have a wonderful day.